Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show, a Friday edition in advance of Game 6 on Saturday, as Boston once again avoided elimination, took care of business at home. The series turns back to Miami, and once again in this series, injuries continue to play an integral role. We saw Gabe Vincent miss last night's game. We saw Malcolm Brogdon leave midway through last night's game. It's a war of attrition as we get towards the end of the playoffs here. With me to talk through it is Mike Gallagher. Mike, how are you?
Doing great. Yeah, nice, great game from Boston. They sure did miss Gabe Vincent yesterday, and yeah, we'll talk a lot about that. Obviously, we don't have the injury report yet, but we'll talk about every iteration of how this looks, and we'll add some other notes that I think are interesting with players possibly wearing down on the Miami side. But yeah, it should be interesting to talk through, and definitely in the DFS side should be a lot of fun to break that down as well.
Yeah, with more off days naturally at this time of the season, and us being a Monday through Friday show, both on the free show here on YouTube and our premium show behind the paywall at establishedrun.com, we wanted to make sure that we covered Game 6 thoroughly. So while we don't have an injury report, we can still give best guesses and estimates on what we expect to see on that injury report. From the Miami perspective, my expectation is that we will see a Gabe Vincent questionable tag once again. I do not think we'll see anything else meaningful on the injury report. I expect, Tyler Hero is still going to be out, Victor Oladipo still out, so on and so
Mhm.
forth. Kyle Lowry, a little bit dinged here and there throughout the series, but he hasn't been on the injury report. So I think it's just going to be Gabe Vincent with the questionable tag. How likely do you think that he returns in Game 6?
Kind of think unlikely. I mean, getting ruled out at shoot around the way he did after he was so confident he was going to play is not great. And talked about it last time. When you jump and you land like that, that's really bad. That's putting the stress on the ligaments at the top of your foot. It's pretty rough. So I kind of think he's going to sit. I think he's going to get the Q tag. Maybe he's game time, but it's going to certainly affect him. Maybe he tries to tough it out. Eric Spoelstra said he's one of the toughest dudes he knows, and he obviously wants to play. You could see his demeanor on the bench when they kept showing him. He looked pretty sad not to be out there. So maybe he goes, but I kind of think he can't go. I mean, I think there's going to be significant swelling given this injury happened just a couple days ago.
Yeah, and he was ruled out pretty early yesterday.
Yep.
Now, I will say they ruled out Jimmy Butler fairly early in that Knicks series when they had
hmm
the game one road win against the Knicks, and they ruled him out pretty early, and
There were a
he
few days
came
off
back.
between that, though.
Right, right. So that's what I was going to get at. He came back
Yeah.
the
Okay.
next game, but there was a little bit more time off in between that. I think there were 4 days in total,
Yeah,
or
I think it
five
was like
days in
Tuesday,
total.
Saturday, or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is a little bit different. I think this is like 2 less days for Gabe Vincent to potentially
Mhm.
recover from. That's the hope if you're a Miami fan, or if you're looking for Miami to potentially close out this series. Obviously, their offense struggled quite a bit in the absence of Gabe Vincent last night. We saw Kyle Lowry slide in the starting lineup. He was ineffective. We saw a big game from Duncan Robinson off the bench. Haywood Highsmith, much to your accolades, was in the rotation playing effectively well. We saw Haywood Highsmith start the second half over Kevin Love, a move that we had been anticipating for some time. Kevin Love leaving the starting lineup. We thought for Caleb Martin, right? But
Mhm.
Haywood Highsmith ended up getting that opportunity. What are your expectations for the different looks that we might see from a starting lineup perspective, with or without Gabe Vincent on Saturday?
Let's go Gabe out first. So they cannot start the same lineup. They cannot start Lowry and Love. Just can't do it. I think one, maybe both are coming out. um, Lowry was, oh my god, that was one of the worst games I've ever seen him play. He was a step slow on everything. He couldn't generate any open looks. He couldn't get anything clean three. Couldn't get the mid range game going. Couldn't get the ball to his other teammates. Was a looked like he was like I was listening to some podcast and I was like, it's like you're like listening to Kyle Lowry play basketball at like point 0.5 speed on a podcast where like Jalen Brown was like 2x speed, like blowing right past him. It was like he was playing in slow mo. So I kind of think Caleb's got to start. I we know Spolstra's been he's kind of late here, and I've been saying Kevin Love's got to go since before the series started. But I think Caleb is probably starting. I felt pretty confident about that yesterday. It could still be Highsmith, but pressure's on, man. They got to get this game. They got to play their best players big minutes. Caleb's consistently been very good. I think Highsmith's in the rotation. So the next question is if it's both. I think that they probably are going to. I would guess it would probably be Lowry, Jimmy, Struess. I think Caleb starts, man, and Bam. So then the next question is, and we should note, um, Highsmith didn't check in till the second. He played like the rest of the game after he
Right.
subbed in,
Right.
which is insane. But I think, and that was the plan. I think they were like, okay, and we were actually talking in our Slack like, when's Highsmith coming? 'Cause I kept saying in our Slack like, hey, he's coming, and I was like, oh, he's gonna sub in for Jimmy because Jimmy was guarding Tatum, and they just needed another
Yep.
wing defender there. So I think that that's going to happen again. He maybe sums it earlier, maybe sums it for Caleb, but I feel pretty confident again that their wing rotation without Gabe is going to be. They need those three guys. They need Haywood, they need Caleb, and they need Jimmy to be their main wing defenders. And can Jimmy even pick up that role anymore? He's really looked slow and hasn't been able to be aggressive. He only had 2 points on drives in the last game versus 14 per game in the previous, and the volume was down. He only had 10 drives yesterday. So Jimmy's looking slow. We could talk about, Boston, and Tatum's defense on him was really, really good. So how's Jimmy holding up here? Jimmy's had this ankle thing that's been lingering. He hasn't been as effective in this series. We talked a lot about that. So a lot of moving parts here. But from an injury perspective, I think Haywood's in. I think that the next question is it Love or Zeller that are the backup center? We saw Love move into the backup center role in the fourth quarter. I think that may have been because they were trailing, but it's not like Zeller earned a lot. And also worth noting, too, we talked about this on the DFS show, were they going to align the Lowry minutes with Zeller? They didn't do that, which I was a little bit surprised by. So, yeah, a whole lot of moving parts here with the Vincent out scenario. Let me hand it to you for a second so I don't talk for another 5 minutes or however long that was. But what are your thoughts on just the no Vincent iteration for this rotation?
So I think it's exceedingly likely that whether we have Gabe Vincent or not, that Kevin Love is out of the starting lineup and Caleb
Yep.
Martin or Haywood Highsmith are in the starting lineup. I think if I think in some ways, if they have Gabe Vincent, it might be more likely that it's Haywood Highsmith starting than
Hmm.
Caleb Martin, simply because what you alluded to there, maybe needing to take a little bit more of the defensive assignment off of Jimmy's hands with Tatum, and Jimmy having to expend more energy as a ball handler potentially. But also with Gabe Vincent, you have a little bit more offense out there covered in terms of how you can operate. Um, and Caleb Martin is a better offensive player than Haywood Highsmith. So you might want to you might stagger some of that offense a little bit. If it's Lowry, it might be more Caleb Martin simply because they might need a little bit more of the extra shooting out on the floor and a little bit more of the playmaking and creation from Lowry and Butler. But I think it's exceedingly likely that Kevin Love is out of the starting lineup.
Hmm.
And then moving forward on Kevin Love, what does that mean for him? I agree with you that I think there's a decent chance that the backup center minutes last night were a combination of, hey, we're trailing, and B,
Hmm.
let me just get a look at this so I can see what I want to do in game 6 from Spo. I have said all series long, I think any iteration defensively that aligns Kevin Love with Robert Williams is a issue for Miami. Not that Cody Zeller has a lot of verticality to him. He has a little bit more verticality to him. Perhaps the thought process on Kevin Love there is if we align him with Robert Williams, maybe we can pull Robert Williams away from the basket. We've
Hmm.
seen so many teams in the Western Conference align their offenses geared in a way to take Anthony Davis away from the basket. Maybe that's a thought process for Miami. Try to play like a 5-out type situation. But there's enough guys that Robert Williams can probably hide on and stay in kind of uh, you know basically hide on Haywood Highsmith in the corner or something like that, and then be able to help down on any drives. So
Hmm.
I don't know if it'll be super effective, but I think that might be what Spo's thinking there, which means that I think those backup center minutes could be very up in the air and very like rotation driven and tested out. Meaning I wouldn't be comfortable giving either guy full credit for those minutes in the scenario that Love does not start. And then in the scenario that Vincent is unable to go, I do think it's still Lowry that gets the start.
Yeah.
He's a veteran. He did not play effectively last game for sure, but he has played well at points in the series. He's been very inconsistent with his play, but the highs are still pretty good. And
Mhm.
I think, veteran players been in a bunch of these scenarios before. I think they're probably more likely to start him than not and still give him the chance. But I think the leash will be short with Kyle
Yeah.
Lowry because it's been clear. And I don't know if it's his health, but he's just
Mhm.
either awful or really good. There's
Yeah.
generally not been a really in the middle range for Kyle Lowry this postseason.
Yeah, he's looked real, really slow. So, I was looking at the lineup that I could pull this up on the screen here. But we saw that lineup start in the second half, and it was okay. They played it for 8 minutes, pretty much just to start the third quarter, then things got
Yeah.
sideways, but they scored a little bit, this played pretty even. Look at the starting lineup, though. 50 offensive rating, -167 -167 defensive rating, so, yeah, definitely feel pretty good that makes sense that they would start Highsmith, but I don't know. I just think that it's game six. You start your players. I think that's the push and pull, but very, very confident that Kevin Love is not starting for sure. And then we'll see about Lowry. And I guess let's talk Gabe in. Is Love out regardless? I think
I
so.
think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if Gabe's in, do you still think Highsmith then?
I think if Gabe's in, I think it makes more sense for Highsmith. I think if Gabe's out, it might make more sense for Caleb.
Yeah.
I think Gabe is a more reliable offensive shooting and ball handling
Hmm.
force than Kyle Lowry at this point. And I think Kyle Lowry pairing him with Caleb Martin has a little bit more
Yeah.
quickness and athleticism, whereas Haywood Highsmith, um, he's it's not like he's a bad athlete or anything like that. He's just more of a positional defender, is I guess the way that I
Hmm.
would put it, instead of having like the ability to like get up and down the floor that I think Caleb Martin has, and it might be needed. So those are kind of my thoughts, but honestly, it
Yeah.
might, from Spo's perspective, it might be clear that it's one or the other, regardless of the pairing at point guard.
Yep.
That he has a preference for between Haywood and Caleb, and we did see Haywood jump Caleb for the starting role in the second half last night.
Yeah, makes sense. And should mention Duncan was great, man. 9 assists. Just
Yeah,
he was really aggressive on closeouts, man. They were trying to stay up on him, and he like got into. I didn't look at his drive stats, but he had like so many driving kicks. It was one of the best offensive
he's
games
got
I've
his
really
confidence
ever seen him
back.
play. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got his confidence back. It's really nice to see because he was a player that was super impactful for them a few years ago, and then has lost his confidence, his shooting stroke a little bit. He's gained it back this postseason and been really really effective. And he is one of these guys that is so good moving off the ball and such a threat off the ball that if you add in any ability to make quick decisions and play make off of it, you're just a very, very difficult offensive force to guard. We've seen this with JJ Redick, with Kyle Korver, with some of these guys who are just masters at working through screens. And Duncan Robinson, for a period of time, lost confidence in his shot. And when he lost confidence in his shot, basketball, you have to make so many quick decisions. And when you
Yeah.
are hesitant in a shot, now you're hesitant with the next decision because you were still thinking about the shot. And now
Yeah.
everything's flowing for him. So he's in rhythm and he's playing really effectively. Max Strus has had a really tough series,
Hmm.
and I would not be surprised to continue to see Duncan Robinson eat into Max Strus's minutes because Max Strus looks like he's hesitating a little bit now. Not able to get shots off defensively, not making much of an impact, not rebounding the ball. There's really nothing he's doing particularly well right now. So I would not
Yeah.
be surprised to see Duncan Robinson continue to eat into Strus's minutes.
Yeah, a couple things to add really fast. Shoes picked up a lot of Jalen Brown assignment, and Jalen Brown finally scored in the half court. He had
Yeah,
1.06 points per possession in the half court after being, I mean, these numbers are insane. The last game, he was 0.57, 0.56, and 0.67 the previous three. So he's like basically doubled, almost doubled his output there. And then the other note I wanted to add on Vincent was zone. Games 1 through 4, Gabe's been usually on the floor for a lot of those zone possessions. Games 1 through 4, 0.76 per possession. In game 5, they were way up there. Well, I don't have it in front of me here. Oh yeah, 1.18. So again, like doubled it. Not doubled, but a significant increase there. So they missed Gabe like really bad, and the shooting, right? 23 3-point attempts. That is Gabe's go-to. He's a floor spacer. They
Right.
miss Gabe, man. And I talked about this a little bit on betting show I did, and on how did the line not move, man? I don't get how the line didn't move with Gabe Vincent coming out. He's so valuable to them.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And I think that maybe something, Miami closing line value is a dicey situation to play, but if that Gabe tag comes out with I might hit Boston at where the line's at right now.
Yeah, he's certainly a valuable player. You noted they still shot almost 40% from three, but just not the
Yeah.
volume. They weren't able to create the volume of threes. Boston shot 41% there, but +7 in terms of makes on threes. That's plus 21 points in terms of makes on threes overall. You see a margin of 13 points. Oftentimes in the playoffs, it's almost as simple as that. In this case, Boston was able to generate a ton of threes because they were able to get to the paint pretty consistently and work on drive and kick game much, much more effectively than they had through the first three games of the series. That is something that Miami really, really struggled with last night. They just were not able to get into the paint and create good threes. A lot of the threes that they were able to create were oftentimes the dribble handoff variety instead
Mhm.
of kind of the Jimmy breaking down the defense or Gabe Vincent getting into the paint off screen roll and then kicking out. And those are the threes that generally are higher quality and more in rhythm and whatnot because guys are standing, catch and shoot instead of moving, coming around picks and having to refire. On the Boston side,
One
Malcolm
just one
Brogdon.
quick one quick thing I wanted to add. Free throws, man. Jimmy didn't get to the line. I thought Boston's discipline on not going for the little up and under things he does all the time.
Yep.
That was like really, really good defense. Just wanted to
Yeah.
close the book of Miami, add that was a really good adjustment to keep Jimmy off the line.
Yep. Malcolm Brogdon only 8 minutes last night in the first half, then left. He left at a period where the game was sort of in hand. So you could maybe, in the most optimistic of views, say, "Oh, they kind of had that one wrapped up and just decided like let's end it with Brogdon." But his performance has clearly been hampered
Mhm.
by this forearm issue throughout this series, and the playing time has been dwindling. Derek White was phenomenal last night, shooting the lights out from
Money.
three, 6 for 8 overall, just knocked down everything that was open. Smart was knocking down. I mean, when those two guys combined to go 10 for 14, like good luck
Mhm.
stopping Boston because if those two guys are making threes with these, it's a struggle out there. What are your expectations for Brogdon? I expect he will get a questionable tag, although I will say he has not gotten a questionable tag yet this series. It's been probable tags. There's a chance. He's going to be listed. I feel confident he's
Yeah.
going to be listed. I think it's either probable or questionable. I'd be surprised if we got a straight doubtful tag. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on Malcolm Brogdon?
Yeah, we were all over this. We talked a lot about that initial P tag. I watched too much NBA stuff, and no one talked about this. This is shout out to us. This is why we do this injury show. It's not easy. Anybody can read an injury report, and not everyone can pick up the details here. So shout out to us again. But yeah, P tag game 2 wore sleeve. No P tag game 3 wore sleeve. No P tag no tag game 4 no sleeve. Sleeve was back yesterday, and then quick hook uncomfortable shooting forearm with a tendon issue. That's not good. I mean, I don't know the physiological, kinetic stuff that goes on with that, but that sounds terrible. So he's clearly affected.
Yeah.
The question is if he's out. If he's in, he's not playing a lot. He's just not good enough to play a lot. Or hasn't earned it. Derek White is back. Derek White was very good defensively, I thought. Obviously, he's shooting freaking lights out. Smart was great. Steal right off the bat, set the tone, early threes. Marcus Smart was low key a hero, or maybe high key. I mean, I guess 23 points is pretty high key. So
Yeah.
they're all right. They don't need him. They got Derek White in a good groove. Games in a row defensively. Obviously, the offense has been pretty consistent when they asked him to produce. Grant's been awesome, man. Grant's done everything they need him to. He's been a guy who could soak up a little bit of paint defense. He's been able to hit open shots generally. Wasn't too good yesterday. He's fine. So the question is, did they go 7? Maybe. We saw Pritchard sneak in there for some of the Brogdon minutes in the second half.
Right.
I don't like it. The numbers don't like it either. He's consistently been bad. -8 yesterday, worst on the team despite 5 minutes. Um, I mean, so that was garbage, but he's not effective. So I wouldn't be surprised if Hauser's ahead of him. You don't need the ball handling, man. Jason Tatum's handling the ball a ton. You got White, you got Smart, you got 3 ball handlers. That's more than Miami's gonna have if Gabe Vincent's out. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Hauser in there just to really kind of give it a little extra oomph for 3-point shooting, but they might just go 7, man. Obviously, this is the hashtag biggest game of the season. So, and Grant's shown he can play big minutes. We've seen him, get up there in the upper 20s somewhat consistently when they need him to. So, yeah, I think that they might set him just because he just hasn't. He's really also game 1 he was the worst defender. Game 2, game 3 horrible. Game 4 horrible. Game 5 horrible. So I mean, just set him out, and he's just not helping you right now as great as he's been all season.
Yeah, I think it's possible that he's listed questionable, ruled
Mhm.
active, and they play 7-man rotation. I think
Yep.
that's entirely possible just to keep Miami like preparing for him essentially.
Mhm.
Um, a couple notes from the rotation in game 5 for Boston. I noted in game 4, we did not really see Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of pacing for the mid 40s minutes. We saw that with Tatum in this one.
Mhm.
He played the entire second half until coming out with 319 when the game was in hand. If he had finished those 319, he would have finished at like just over 44 minutes. Jaylen Brown came out right around the same time. He would have finished at the 40-minute mark. So if you're willing to play Tatum and Jaylen Brown, let's say 44, and let's say for Jaylen 40, all of a sudden between Smart, Horford and Time Lord lock down the 4 spot. Now lock down the 5 spot.
Mhm.
Tatum, is if he's playing 44, that's essentially 4 minutes left over at a spot. He's obviously playing between the 3 and the 4. Jaylen Brown between the 2 and the 3. But the point being, like, it's easier to play 7 when you've got 2 guys that are going to play 44 and 40. And so I don't think we'll get into Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser. I think Brogdon
Mhm.
will be like the break glass in case of emergency active would be my guess. And then I think
Mhm.
we'll see more along the lines of a 7-man rotation with Grant Williams probably pacing closer to the 25 mark than the 27 he got up to.
Mhm.
We'll also note that, Al Horford was really effective once again.
Yeah.
He did not play any of the final 6 minutes of the game. He finished at 29. So the minutes ceiling for Al Horford still remains pretty strong when he's playing
Mhm.
effectively. He was good at slowing down Bam in the first half. Bam got it going a little
Yeah.
bit in the second half and the third quarter, but generally effective over there. Did not make his threes, which is something that he had been doing, but he was really good at moving the ball along the perimeter and making quick decisions, which
Yeah.
allowed them to get a lot of clean looks from 3. He had a bunch of assists to Derek White, Smart, and Jaylen Brown when
Mhm.
he was kind of just moving the ball as the open man. And they had Miami scrambling kind of all night long in
Yeah.
defense there. So I think we're going to see a very tight rotation from Boston in game 6. That's normally the case when you get deep in these series. We've seen Boston play really tight in game 6 and 7 before against Philadelphia. I just think Brogdon's probably the odd man out now due to health. And I think they can get by that this series, and I don't think it's too big of a deal. I think if they were to advance to the finals, they're going to need a healthy Malcolm Brogdon at some point. So I don't know what what the recovery timeline is for this injury in terms of when Malcolm can be fully healthy. I know, I didn't play basketball at any level growing up. I played tennis at the collegiate level, and I had tendonitis repeatedly in all 3 tendons in my elbow. And I know basically the diagnosis was meaningful rest, like weeks of rest before feeling back to normal again. And it was something that you could try to play through, and you deal with a lot of treatment and different things. And obviously, these guys are professionals getting much better treatment than I was as a college athlete. But it was something that to be fully healed needed weeks. I don't know if that's the same type of injury that Malcolm Brogdon's dealing with.
Yeah. Golfer's elbow, not tennis elbow, was the initial diagnosis
Yeah,
from him. So
yeah. Which I don't know what the difference is. I'm thinking it's just
yeah.
one of the different tendons, but I had it at all
Yeah.
3 tendons, so I'm guessing that
Oh man.
it's the same deal.
Yeah, because
So
tennis elbow is inside, and
right.
I think the golfer's thing's outside. If it's
Yep.
forearm, right? Probably.
Yep.
I don't know
Yep.
the exact tendon
And
and
from a
stuff.
shooting perspective, like that all the like rehab and stretching and extra work that you do is like flexing essentially. So
Mhm.
like it's gotta be super impactful on the shot. Like I said, I didn't play basketball at any sort of level, so I've never tried shooting with any sort of tendonitis, but I imagine it's awful in terms of
Yeah,
being
you
able to
wouldn't.
control
It's
the
not. You
ball.
don't really hurt your because you're so focused. He didn't get hurt on that. He got hurt on a box
Right,
out according to the reporting.
right,
So, but still, it's going to
right.
affect him. But one
Yeah.
other note: we saw 2 minutes of overlap from Time Lord and Horford in the fourth quarter, maybe because of the lead. But that's another way to kind of eat minutes. If they're
That's
not going to
true.
play
Yeah.
Brogdon, so that could be
Yeah.
another way. Because if they're only going to play 7 and they're not going to overlap, you're asking a
That's really
lot
hard. Yeah,
out of
that's really
everyone
hard.
else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a
So
good point. Really, really,
yeah,
really worthwhile point as well there. I also wouldn't be surprised to see kind of what I expected we might see from Christian Brown in game 4 from
yeah,
Denver, which we did not. He did not play in game 4, but the like token first half rotation, just see how it goes. If
uh-huh,
Brogdon's active, like I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that and then scrap it,
yeah,
where there might be like 4 to 6 minutes of Brogdon in the first half and see how he's feeling or something if he is active. Wouldn't
yeah,
surprise me. It would surprise me if we finish game 6 and we look at a box score and we see 20 plus minutes from Malcolm Brogdon. That would surprise me
yeah,
quite a bit.
yeah. And the quotes from Missoula where they were going to go with the flow on Brogdon, and after the game he said the quote gave us the best he could. So clearly bothered.
Yeah.
And then they'll probably, like you said, probably fill him out if he's going great. They need the minutes from somebody. We're talking about Hauser and Pritchard. So if
Yeah.
he could give him, 60% Brogdon minutes, that's better than what the other options.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anything else we need to tackle before we get out of here?
No, yeah, just a plus defensive game from Tatum. Really good passing, 15 potential assists. We talked about Horford, Smart, White, Brown. Mentioned him. His game looked really sped up. Looked really comfortable. Grant's been great. And yeah, I think I feel really good about how we analyzed the game yesterday. Honestly, I was hiking yesterday. Like, all right, I feel like my Max Struess flag plant was stupid, but I feel like we put everyone in a pretty good spot yesterday with all the Highsmith talk for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like I played great yesterday. I did not bink,
Yeah.
so I lost 50% in showdown, which is the way it goes. But
Yep.
it's weird. The game before I thought I played terribly and I binked, and it's just like and last game I thought I had like huge overweights on Haywood Highsmith, Al Horford,
Yep.
Duncan Robinson. Felt like really good about the way that I played. The one thing
Yeah.
I wish I had done is it played more 5-1s. We'll talk about that stuff on the DFS
Oh
show
yeah.
in behind the paywall at 5 o'clock Eastern today. But as always, this show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money, running edition in many formats of NFL best ball contest, including Best Ball Mania 4, with 15 million in total prizes. If you're playing NBA Pick'em in-season, subscribers can use our tool to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. If you haven't signed up for an Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. As I alluded to before, myself and Mike Gallagher will be behind the paywall at 5 o'clock Eastern time. We'll be talking through the macro strategy for game 6 from a showdown perspective. Good chalk, bad chalk, ways to play from a roster and construction perspective, ways to try to get unique in showdown, which is always challenging the later that you get into series. We'll have that all behind the paywall today, establishedrun.com, 5 o'clock Eastern time. Join us then. As always, if you're uninterested in giving us your hard-earned dollars, we do ask for your hard-earned clicks. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. And of course, smash that like button and help feed that algorithm. You help feed the algorithm, it helps feed our families. We keep feeding you the injury information analysis you need to make your spread bets, your prop bets, and your DFS lineup. So feed that algorithm in advance of hopefully a hefty feeding weekend. So enjoy your weekend. Nom 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 nom. We'll see you next week.